One of the biggest criticisms of electric cars goes something like this. They're good until you need to replace that battery every 4 years for $20,000. It's easy for either side of this argument to stick in people's minds. One person believes electric cars need these constant replacements, and they're a dumb idea, while someone else believes that EV batteries will literally last forever and probably don't even cost that much. Well, as is the case with many things, the truth lies somewhere in between. Today we're going to look into the true cost of replacing an EV battery, how often it's necessary, and analyze this from a ton of real-world data. So let's get into it, and a special thanks to Ritual for sponsoring a portion of this video. As a quick background for electric cars, these cars operate fully using electricity. Their battery pack is what stores energy that the car uses to drive. Long term, like all batteries, they can wear out some with what is called degradation, meaning after a few years the full range is no longer achieved, similar to what we experience with smartphones after a few years. A big difference here though is that electric car batteries are huge. They're so large that instead of being measured in watt hours, they're measured in kilowatt hours. A watt hour is a unit of measurement for power over a period of time, an hour, or in our case, a way of measuring capacity. 1 watt hour is equal to 1 watt of average power flow over an hour. Then a kilowatt hour is 1,000 times as large as a watt hour. For example, let's take an iPhone 14 battery. This is a fairly standard modern phone, and that battery pack is 12.68 watt hours. A modern MacBook Air has a capacity of 49.9 watt hours. A Tesla Model Y, on the other hand, one of the most popular electric cars out there, has a capacity of up to 81 kilowatt hours, or 81,000 watt hours. As you can imagine, replacing this battery could be costly. In fact, battery cost is one of the biggest reasons why electric cars still cost a premium compared to gas equivalent cars. They bring other advantages that make the cost worthwhile to many, but that's for another video. First, let's look at the cost of replacing an EV battery pack, and then we'll get into why a replacement may be necessary and how often it truly occurs. Recurrent Auto has a ton of great data on this, and we'll be looking at their reports as well as JD Power. For a car like the Chevy Bolt, that comes with a max 66 kilowatt hour battery pack, and 2 different quotes for a battery replacement have come in right around $16,000 as of 2020. For the Nissan Leaf as of 2020, their smallest 30 kilowatt hour battery pack was around $3,500 to $4,500 to replace. Their 40 kilowatt hour pack was around $6,500 to $7,500 to replace, and their largest 62 kilowatt hour pack was around $8,500 to $9,500 to replace. A really important point that Recurrent is detailing here is the cost per kilowatt hour to replace from each of these brands. For most people, it was around $150 to $187 per kilowatt hour to replace the Nissan Leaf pack, and that is important to know since there are a variety of pack sizes. Simply saying a battery pack costs $4,500 to replace may not actually apply to your specific battery depending on its size. Now those are 2 popular EVs, but they've also been around for a while, and the Chevy Bolt has had many a battery recall. So what about Tesla battery replacements? What do they cost? First off, it's important to keep in mind that a battery replacement will only cost you money if it's out of warranty. The battery pack on my 2020 Model Y was replaced entirely, and this was done at no cost to me. That's because of Tesla's battery warranty that is 8 years or 120,000 miles on most of their popular cars. These warranties differ a tad on mileage for the cheapest Model 3 and then the Model S or X. So if something were to go wrong within your first 120,000 miles or 8 years with the car, your battery would be replaced on Tesla's dime. However, when it is done out of warranty, here are the costs. For the Model S, which has been out the longest of any Tesla, a 2021 report found that battery replacements were costing between $12,000 and $15,000. In 2020 as well, an owner had their 2014 Model S pack replaced for $20,000 including labor. Then there are a few reports of owners being charged $22,000 for a Model S full pack replacement out of warranty. For the Model 3, that car actually hasn't been out long enough to see out of warranty replacements that much, but data is there due to accident-related replacements. For a Model 3 customer in 2020, a Model 3 pack replacement ended up costing $15,799.27 in total. That's about $180 per kilowatt hour, but more recent data shows a pack cost around $10,000 to $12,000 out the door. For all of the cars Recurrent has looked at in depth, they put a range of $5,000 to $20,000 for a battery replacement, but Recurrent specifies, we encourage people not to focus on the average cost of an EV battery replacement because it varies so much by make and model. Instead, check the remaining warranty information on a particular vehicle, then look at the replacement rate and cost for that model. So that's expensive. There's no way around it. Regardless of what car you are looking at or what your budget is, if your electric car needed a battery replacement, this cost would be very unfortunate. However, these costs are expected only to decline over time as general battery costs come down. Quote, according to the Department of Energy, the cost of an EV's lithium-ion battery fell 89% from $1,355 per kilowatt hour in 2008 to $153 per kilowatt hour in 2022. The agency attributes the drastic drop to improvements in battery technology and an increase in manufacturing volume. So even in the worst case scenario some are afraid that will happen, where in 8 years Model 3s all need out-of-warranty battery pack replacements, they should be quite a bit less to obtain. But how common are these replacements? Is this inevitable like some think it used to be on the Prius at a certain mileage? Well, one of the reasons the data we're looking at is fairly sparse is because battery replacements are so rare. First, JD Power says that no matter the model or manufacturer, all EV batteries last for 10 to 20 years. Then, of 15,000 EV drivers studied by Recurrent, only 1.5% of them needed a battery replacement, and that's excluding recalls for cars like the Chevy Bolt. Quote, there have been 2 major battery recalls in recent years, both related to similar battery pack flaws in the Chevrolet Bolt EV and EUV and the Hyundai Kona Electric. The remedy for both of these recalls was a sweeping battery replacement program covered by the manufacturers. Other than these 2 recalls, though, battery replacements in the Recurrent community remain rare. You can see on this chart how common these replacements are. They're very rare on the Model 3 and Y so far, and they point out that older cars do generally see more battery replacements than new ones. Again, those recalls are covering most of these replacements, though. Then the majority of pack replacements are for the oldest cars, like a 2013, 2014, and 2015 Model S, along with 2011 and 2012 Nissan Leafs. The older they are, the more common a pack replacement, with a 2013 Model S at 8.5%. As Recurrent points out, a good rule of thumb for battery longevity would be the manufacturer's warranty. How long are they willing to guarantee that your battery will last? If it doesn't last long, they're the ones eating the replacement cost. The federal minimum here is 8 years or 100,000 miles. Before we go any further, I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Ritual. Ritual is the obsessively researched and transparently made multivitamin. When it comes to the ingredients they use, you can trace the decision-making process behind each one, from where they source their nutrients and why to their environmental impact. I like to order multivitamins from Ritual because they use 100% recycled materials and put a mint tab in every bottle to make taking them refreshing. Ritual offers vitamins that support men, women, 50+, prenatal, postnatal, and teens. I take their Essential for Men multivitamin, which contains 10 high-quality nutrients like vitamin A, D, omega-3, and zinc that are sometimes difficult to get depending on diet. Their delayed-release capsule design is gentle on an empty stomach, and the multivitamins are vegan-friendly, non-GMO, gluten-free, allergen-free, and contain no added sugar. Ritual makes it super easy to get into the habit of taking your vitamins by delivering your subscription right to your door at no extra charge. They also have an essential protein range and recently launched Symbiotic Plus. It's a 3-in-1 pre, pro, and postbiotic to help support gut, digestive, and immune health that doesn't require refrigeration. Right now, they're offering 20% off your first month with Ritual. Go to ritual.com/RyanShaw20 or click the link in the description below and use my code RyanShaw20 at checkout. The main reason a battery needs replacing, though, is due to extreme degradation, to where the car no longer travels very far, or if something goes wrong with the battery itself. As for degradation, we typically see the largest drop-off during the first 50,000 miles or so of driving, and then EV batteries level off to a degree. Here's a chart of how Model S batteries have degraded over time on average. Here's the Model 3. One really big aspect to note here as well is that battery technology and battery management systems are continually improving. So it makes sense that a full 10 years after the Model S's reported in these charts, Model 3s with upgraded battery technology are holding out better. Tesla details this further in their recent impact report, but specific again for the Model S and X because they've been out the longest. According to Tesla, their batteries only lose about 12% of their battery capacity after a full 200,000 miles of driving. They added, performance of newer chemistries not shown here can vary, and we plan to expand disclosure once we have sufficient data. Those new chemistries could include 2170 cells in the Model 3 and Y, 4680 cells in the new Model Y, and LFP cells in the rear-wheel drive Model 3, to name a few. There are tons of battery updates that have happened since these Model S batteries, and they should only be improved over what Tesla is charting here. According to data from Nimble Fins as well, all models lose about 1% of range yearly. This means that you'll only be able to charge the battery to 90% capacity after 10 years. The hardest part with all of this data, though, is that yes, battery replacements are rare, and far less common than the majority of people tend to think. But why do they still occur in the first place? EVs are so new that it's hard to have truly sweeping long-term data here. As I mentioned earlier, the Model 3 hasn't even been around long enough to exceed Tesla's 8-year warranty. For most people, they haven't driven 120,000 miles either yet. There are a few factors, though, that can help you take great care of your battery to set it up for the best life. First, I'll say these are tips, not requirements. They are things to keep in mind, but not things that should stress you out throughout ownership. For some, the response to the following section will be, live your life, drive your car. Many of these things won't impact you, but if you really want to ensure your battery is in pristine condition in 8 years or longer, these can help. Quote, the best practices to avoid battery degradation are things that either reduce the physical stress of the chemical reactions on the battery or avoid things that speed up the chemical reactions. According to Recurrent, there are a few ways to ensure best care. For one, don't leave the car in heat if you can avoid it. Park in shade, and keeping the battery cool is best long term. Then for charging, if you don't need to fast charge constantly, level 2 220 volt charging will be the best for your car. Quote, DC fast charging is the double bacon cheeseburger for charging. Great on a road trip, but best to avoid every day. Most batteries are built for regular level 2 or 220 volt charging. Then there is charging percentage and depth of charge. The less you actually use the battery at once, the better. So lithium-ion batteries typically like being charged to around 80% for best longevity. Tesla recommends 80% and Rivian recommends 70% for their EVs. This is what I do, and Tesla says that a happy Tesla is a plugged-in Tesla. A reason for this is that smaller, frequent charges are better than larger, infrequent charges. For example, if you were going to use up 60% of your battery over the course of 3 days, the best method will be to charge to 80%, use 20% the first day, recharge to 80%, use 20% the next day, recharge to 80%, and so on. Technically, if you use all 60% over those 3 days and then recharge, this is stressing the battery more. Optimizing this long term can have an effect. For me, I just always plug in no matter how little I drive, and that's an advantage of being able to charge at home. This is my habit, and I don't worry if I forget or if I'm fast charging on a road trip. These cars are meant to be driven, but like anything, can last longer with extra care. So let's say you're looking to buy a used EV though. You don't have 8 years from the day you bought the car, and really, who knows how the previous owner took care of that battery? Maybe they exclusively fast charged. How can you make the right choice and not end up with an expensive battery pack replacement? There are a few recommendations here, but the main one is to check on the vehicle's battery warranty using a VIN decoder and ensure that its original warranty will be transferred to you. Note that for most manufacturers, the battery warranty is separate from the general warranty. You can also ensure you'll get a warranty from buying a certified pre-owned EV. These may add an extra warranty or clearly extend the original battery warranty. Long term though, we still don't quite know what it's going to look like in the future. Based on our data so far, it appears that buying an 8-year-old Model S may end up fine for you in the future, since the Model S can typically last 200,000 miles. New cars like the Model 3 should last even longer, but this is yet to happen, so we just don't have the data to support it yet fully in the real world. In 2019, Elon Musk said Model 3 drive unit and body is designed like a commercial truck for a million-mile life. Current battery modules should last 300,000 to 500,000 miles, 1,500 cycles. If that's true, that's a fantastic amount of miles that a Model 3 or Y pack can last, but we always know to take his tweets with a spoonful of salt. There are also new programs from people like Recurrent being built up over time that will analyze a car's battery over time. So if a previous owner has opted in for this data, it can be very helpful when you're buying a used EV. Right now, it might be a little tough to find one with this specific report, but if you can, you'll definitely know what the battery health is overall. I think long term, that might be one of the best solutions we see for EVs, so that you know when you're buying a used EV that the battery has been taken care of and won't give out on you anytime soon. Even still, from the data we've seen, it doesn't seem like batteries give out that much at all. Ultimately, when these cars do reach the end of their life, their batteries will be recycled, and that'll reduce the cost associated with manufacturing EVs or getting a battery replacement. Beyond the obvious environmental benefits, this is in the best interest of automakers because recycling EV batteries will be cheaper than mining new raw materials. If that's not enough of an incentive though, lawmakers are already working to make sure this happens. In September of last year, the US Senate passed the Strategic EV Management Act, which is a bill that aims to maximize EV battery recycling for federal fleet vehicles. Then the bipartisan infrastructure law requires the EPA to develop battery recycling best practices and battery labeling guidelines by September 30th, 2026. But who's actually making this happen right now? Just focusing on the US, there are several companies already making a difference. Accent Elements in Georgia can produce 30,000 metric tons of used lithium-ion batteries and manufacturing scrap each year. Another company is Li-Cycle, who partners with large battery makers like GM and LG to help them create a closed cycle for recovering and recycling batteries. There are hundreds of more companies across the world that are working toward making lithium mining a thing of the past, but one of the most successful companies has been Redwood Materials. Redwood was established by former Tesla CTO J.B. Straubel in 2017 and is currently the largest EV battery recycler in the country. In February, the Department of Energy awarded a $2 billion loan commitment to Redwood Materials Inc. to expand their operations so they can manufacture battery components for more than 1 million EVs annually. Recently, the company released a report with specific data on their progress over the last year. From 1,268 batteries collected, they recovered about 500,000 pounds of materials, and they're, quote, already beginning to produce high-quality battery materials, anode and cathode, that can be returned directly to US battery cell manufacturers. In November, they made a deal with Panasonic to source their high-nickel cathodes from Redwood and start implementing them in 2025. Quote, this will be the first time cathode has been produced in North America at gigafactory scale and used in US battery cell manufacturing. Overall, battery recycling is new. It's brand new technology that is just starting to be implemented, but demand for these recycled batteries is predicted to increase by more than 500% in the next decade. Because this tech is so new, we don't have solid data on the actual cost comparison between mining new materials and recycling end-of-life batteries. What we can assume, though, is that, as with any technology, it's only expected to get better from here. These companies will be ramping up the number of batteries they recover and improving the percentage of materials they can reuse until eventually, in the long future, mining is not even required. We have to consider a huge amount of that cost. The pollution associated with EV battery production is due to transportation as well. Having batteries made in the same country where the cars are being produced will be huge, both for the environment and for long-time EV price reduction. This is a very exciting time for the EV battery industry, and it's looking like there's not any need to worry about potentially needing to replace your car's battery if you buy it new. Even if it does need to be replaced right after your warranty is out, I expect the price of that battery is only going to keep decreasing, and hopefully that's still very rare. Then if you buy a used EV, especially a Tesla, that battery should last well over 200,000 miles, so it'll outlive just about any ICE vehicle anyway. I hope this video was helpful for you and answered any questions you may have about EV battery replacements and if that's something you need to consider when buying an EV. In the meantime, if you want to see 6 times Teslas have been hacked before, you can check out that video linked up here or in the description below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.